So you've been one of the leading critics on the U.S. stance towards Huawei. What's your take that this meeting is happening at all?
I think this is a very dangerous meeting. Huawei is not an independent actor. It is an arm of the Chinese intelligence agency. We cannot trust that us empowering and doing business with Huawei will not end up having negative consequences for us. As a matter of fact, we just read the Washington Post this last weekend. Huawei was working with a shell company in North Korea, supplying them with technology that was explicitly banned through our sanctions regime. This is why we have joined in a bipartisan manner with Congressman Gallego from Wisconsin to try to make sure that we actually enforce a Huawei ZTE sanctions regime that we think is being effective. And the president should not do one-off trades for farm goods for something that could significantly impact the future of both our country as well as our allies' country in terms of information technology.
Now, there are some in the U.S. business community, including many high-level tech CEOs, who will tell you privately they've seen no evidence that Huawei uses its equipment to spy on the U.S. or anyone else. What would you say to them?
Well, again, I hope they would just read the Panda Shell Corporation that was set up in North Korea to allow Huawei to essentially do business with North Korean companies that we have sanctioned. So clearly this company, Huawei, is not operating on the up and up. Number two, it is well known that among Chinese companies, it is part of their mandate that they must make anything available and any assets available to the Chinese government. And while I respect a lot of these companies, their goal is to have the highest amount of profit margins for their corporate shareholders. As a member of Congress, the most important thing for me is our national security. And this sends a very bad message also to our allies overseas, who we are trying to convince also not to incorporate Huawei into the national security technology apparatus because it makes us, as partners, it makes it very difficult for us to actually share information with them.
Now, you're referencing a report in the Washington Post that Huawei has partnered with a Chinese state-connected company, Panda, as you say, on projects in North Korea to improve things like, for example, their wireless infrastructure, and has been partnered with this company, according to the Washington Post, for 8 years. Now, when the president was asked about this story, he didn't seem particularly alarmed. He said the U.S. will lead on 5G. We'll see what North Korea does. How does this new potential revelation about Huawei in North Korea, Huawei has denied any work in North Korea, how does that change your level of objection here?
Well, it certainly makes me want to, obviously, clearly, I object even harder about this, and I think other corporations as well as other members of Congress should be worried about this. The fact that the president doesn't seem to understand the problem, the scope, really tells you that we should question his judgment when it comes to his decisions on this very key, important national security issue. Again, I think this president does not understand the full scope of what's happening and what could happen if Huawei should be able to have access to our information technology market as well as our allies, and is just trying to be essentially play one trade war against each other. We should not be trading access to the 5G market for Huawei for us to go back to what we had pre-trade war, which is basically us being able to sell farm products to China. This is should be separate from this trade war because this will have longer lasting effects to our national security than this temporary trade war we have.
Well, and that's my next question, because, the leaders of these U.S. companies will say the blacklisting of Huawei has significantly hurt their bottom line. Some of these companies provide supplies, provide chips, for example, to Huawei smartphones and laptops and consumer products that they say don't have much of a threat to national security. What would you say to those CEOs?
Well, they're wrong. It's determination and has been the determination of the U.S. intelligence community as well as Congress, as ET and Huawei are dangerous operators. We have a right as Congress, as a nation, to stop corporations from engaging with other countries and other entities that potentially put our national security apparatus in danger or do not align with our interests. I don't see these companies complaining about us having a sanctions regime against Iran, against other bad actors around the world. They do not have a right to corporate profit at the sake of U.S. national security. That's just how it is, and unfortunately, hopefully we in Congress get our way and are able to stop the U.S. administration as well as these CEOs from getting their way.
So exactly, what would you like to see the Trump administration do? What do you think Congress should do?
I think the Trump administration should continue with the sanctions regime they have right now and force them and go even stronger. And I think if Congress, and hopefully that stays, if the president does not do that, I think Congress, the House and the Senate in a bipartisan manner, should pass a new sanctions regime or continue the sanctions regime that exists on Huawei and ZTE to make sure that we're enforcing some good order and discipline to continue to protect our national security interests.
Now, since I have to ask you about Iran. The president defends withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, and meantime, Iran has seized a British-flagged oil tanker. Tensions seem to be escalating. So what do you think the U.S. should do about the Iran situation?
Look, I think that we have to respond to Iran, but in a measured manner with assistance and concurrence with our allies, especially Britain and our European allies. I think at the same time, we do have to recognize that us leaving the JCPOA without any plan, more as a knee-jerk reaction to anti-Obamanism policy that this president has created this situation. Right now, Iran has said they're going to comply with the JCPOA, even though they're not going to receive any of the economic benefits of sanctions lift, but there are still other areas that we have to keep this president. But the last thing we can afford, the last thing that we need is a war in the Middle East. It's not even in our national security interest for us to engage in this type of war, but we have a lot of other tools in the toolbox, I think, to both keep Iran in check and also at the same time try to de-escalate the situation through diplomatic means.
And speaking of the tensions here at home, the president under fire for now multiple days for what some have called racist or racially charged language about four Democratic congresswomen, all women of color. Do you believe the president's remarks have been racist and that he is stoking racial tension, especially given his response or the lack thereof to supporters at his rallies calling "send her back"?
Yes, of course. Look, this is not the first time the president has used race as a way to engage his base and enrage his base. Let's remember that this president started off his political career basically accusing President Obama of being born in Africa and snuck into this country for some weird crypto reason. Then he, accused a Mexican-American judge that was born in Indiana of having dual loyalties. And so it's not surprising that he describes four American women as essentially not being American and not loving this country, and these women are of color. He does not describe, Nancy Pelosi or any other women that are white as being un-American or not loving the country. He's clearly trying to gin up a base of his support that is racist and does believe in these racist types of theories.